So I'm a 16-year-old girl, and I go to high school now, and I've had some troubles or issues with motivation and actually doing well at school and having the ability to focus and do well at school. And so my question is, do you have any advice on what I can do to get more motivation?
Well, motivation often comes from your idea of value. You know, if you look at your school experience, you have some idea of how valuable that is, you know, and not necessarily in a big picture, but just in the everyday picture, how valuable. You have the social interactions, and sometimes those can be good, and sometimes those can be very painful. You have the academic part, and often in schools, things are taught in such a way that you don't have any idea what the significance of that is. You know, why do I need to learn all this stuff? You know, what difference does it make to my life that I find out that so and so did something 500 years ago? You know, why is that important in life? Well, as it turns out, all those things are significant in life, but not generally the way they're taught to you. Our education has turned out to be almost sterile in many ways. You know, it's not whether somebody did a particularly amazing thing 500 years ago that changed the course of history. That's not the point. Memorizing facts has very little value. And when you see learning as memorization of facts, then learning becomes very sterile and not very interesting. You have to see the bigger picture. You have to see, well, how did that come about? How did this person end up doing that? How did all the other people who supported it, because if a person just does something amazing all by himself and no other people are affected, it doesn't matter how amazing it is, it's not all that important. It doesn't become a historical thing. It's because other people got involved, that this person somehow did something that got a whole lot of other people doing things. And how did that dynamics work? And why did it work that way? What was it in that society that people were ready to move in that direction? And this important historical guy was just the catalyst that made it happen. He's not really the important thing. It's what was going on, the feelings, the emotions, the understanding that was going on within the culture at the time, and then the catalyst that was the spark that created the event that became the big historical event. We tend to look at it as people. Oh, so and so did this. You know, well, people don't do things like that. It's they and all of their connections to all the other people that were around at the time, to the politics, to the sociology, to the environment. You have all of these things was just right so that these things happened. And if we learn in school to memorize the names of the catalyst, you know, who was there at the right time to get all that going, then it seems pretty dull. What value is that? There's not a lot of value in that. And kids know that. They look at a lot of the things they learn in school and they say, what's the point? Well, there is a point, but the teachers generally miss it themselves. And that is the bigger picture. Why did things happen? Why did that event take place? What are all the social connections and attitudes and learning and ignorance and, you know, beliefs, and how did all that work together to create this momentous event? That's important, because you know what? Right now, we're in similar situations. There's all kinds of things going on. There are people who are acting as catalysts that do things that suddenly change the world, change how we think, suddenly get people riled up, create new beliefs, sometimes create new ignorance. You know, we did understand something before. Now maybe we revert to acting in ways that are less informed. So we have all this going on, and to see that big picture and understand how it works, what are all the forces involved? And these are emotional forces, not just force, you know, force of arms or force of numbers, but emotional forces, attitudinal forces, belief forces. How does all that go to create an outcome? Because we're doing that now. Our reality is replaying a lot of these same things. You know, a lot of our culture isn't that much different than it was 500 years ago. A lot of things are similar. So it's important because we learn something about ourselves, and we learn something about the world, and we learn something about how people interact and what makes things happen. And how does it happen? Because then we, knowing that, can become one of those catalysts. We, knowing that, can actually put ourselves in places where we change things and change people. Not because we stand up and make speeches, but because we see big pictures, we see events, we see how they're moving. We can prepare for them. So all of that education is a very important thing. You know, they teach math in such a way as it's just plug and chug. You memorize how to write down right answers. You memorize how to get good grades on a test. And anybody with a brain will look at that and say, what's the point? You see? Well, basically there is no point. Except in the future, as you grow up, being able to track things and understand quantity and the logic of quantity, which is all math is, becomes a very valuable and important tool for you to do that. Yes, somebody gives you a piece of paper and it's got 20, math problems on it, and you're supposed to solve all 20 and hand it in, and you get checks on them all if they're right, and you get a grade on it. There's very little value in that other than learning to manipulate the basics. So sometimes when you're at the beginning of learning, just doing the drudge work of learning how to manipulate the basics is necessary. Like when you were 3 years old or 2 years old and you learned the alphabet, you learn to sing the song, A, B, C, D. We sing that song so that we can remember the alphabet. And I imagine there's a lot of little 3-year-olds are saying, what's the point? Okay, I memorize all these names. Okay, so what? What's the point? Well, later on in life, there is a point. That's where you have to start. You have to begin with the basics and learn the basic things that enable you to learn more things. So I feel your pain. I've been there too. I did not find school a place I really enjoyed going to. It was something that I often thought the same thing. What is the point? Why am I going through this? The very little motivation to learn and absolutely no excitement about learning it until I actually ran into a few really good teachers. And in my environment, that was exceptional. Most teachers just weren't all that good. They were just doing their job, getting paid, getting a check, and going home. They were doing what they were told to do on the curriculum that they were given, and it wasn't very exciting for them either. But I ran into a few really good teachers who did excite me, and I thought the learning was wonderful, and I loved to learn. At least I found that out. I just didn't like going over the same stuff over again and never actually getting to the part that was important. Well, you may have to do that on your own. If you don't run into these really good teachers, you may have to figure that out on your own, but you're still going to have to know the alphabet. You're still going to have to know how to add and subtract and multiply and divide and do all of that junk that's been drilled into you for the past, 8 years. So you got to suck it up, learn the basics, but also start looking for the bigger picture. Start looking for what's really important about that history. What is it about that history that we can apply to today? How are things happening now that are a shadow or an image of what happened then? And you'll see there's a lot of parallels that help you understand things in a much better way. So even if the teacher doesn't go there, you should go there on your own. Find the value in this stuff and realize that, all right, you're 16, in a couple of years, you're going to be getting into a college, probably. And if you get into a college, suddenly you're not spoon-fed information and asked to regurgitate it on a test. That happens in the lower grades, and that's when you're doing the very basics. The higher up you get in education, the more it is about thinking, the more it is about seeing big pictures. So as you get into college and get into graduate school, suddenly learning is a whole lot more fun, because it's not read this stuff and be able to, memorize it and tell me what's in it in a week from now. That's very hard to find interest in. But learning does get better. The higher up on the levels you go, the more fun it is, the more exciting it is. And eventually at the graduate level, you can find a lot of fun in doing interesting new things, thinking original thoughts. But most of the education you're going to find in your life that it really is going to be important to you is how you educate yourself. What do you make of these things? All right, go ahead and memorize all the dates and people's names, regurgitate them on the test, get good grades, because that'll help you get into a good college. Yeah, that's the price you have to pay. Suck it up and do what you need to do to escape. Don't blow it off, because that just creates more problems. Now, the things that are more fun are out of your reach. See, the problem, if you work at your studies to where you learn things that enable you to do creative work, then all the rest of your life you'll be doing creative work, and that'll be fun, and your careers will be fun. If you stop before you get to the point where you can do creative work, then all the rest of your life is going to be flipping burgers someplace, or waiting tables, or pumping gas, or doing things that don't require big picture creative thinking. You're just turning a crank, and then your life becomes drudgery and very boring, because you just do the same things over and over and over again. There's no challenge, and work is just some place you have to go in order to earn the money to pay the bills. And that's not nearly as happy a place to be, as work is some place that allows me to create, allows me to solve problems and have fun. So the higher up you get in the educational process, the more you understand the bigger pictures you have, the more the rest of your life is going to be happy, is going to be positive and challenging and creative. The quicker you get out and start turning a crank on something, yeah, at 18, it'd be really nice to have a job and have a car and, have independence and all that sort of thing. But you're at a point where getting into that creative strata is really hard to do. It's really difficult, because you don't necessarily have all the tickets that'll help you get there. So some of it is just suck it up and do it, because that's where you are. That's the way your school is, and you need to succeed and be good at it just so you can get into the stuff that'll be more fun later. And some of it is teach yourself. Don't just learn what the teacher tells you, but when you read about that history, take in all the stuff that isn't written, all the stuff that you can surmise from the bigger picture. Always look at big pictures, not little pictures. Who did what? What's their name? When did they do it? Is tiny little data in the little picture. Not all that important. Why did they do it? How did it happen to work? Why did it have a big impact? Well, those are bigger thoughts, and those you will find interesting when you have them. So I know it's hard. I've been there. I felt that way, but there is light at the end of that tunnel, and it helps if you just suck it up, get really good grades, and have more and more opportunity as you get up toward that end of learning that is creative and exciting and fun. But where you are now at 16 is not creative, it's not that exciting, and it's not that much fun, but you just have to learn that alphabet and learn that math and learn all those facts just because that's the way your school is. You'll just have to do it and excel at it, even if it isn't much fun, because it'll help create the credentials and the learning that you need to get to the levels that are fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome.